Hi there, welcome back to the Havilland Aircraft Museum. I'm Alistair, the curator. We've seen a little bit before about the Mosquito FB6, which was the most numerous version of the Mosquito produced in actual fact. It's the one used for low-level attacks. It had 4 machine guns in the nose, cannon underneath, but it could also carry a range of other interesting weapons as well. The first one I want to show you is this one here. And it's a 6-pounder anti-tank gun, basically. You put one of these in the belly of the Mosquito and take most of the other weaponry out. And the reason for doing all this is to have a go at U-boats, because the U-boats coming to and fro across the Bay of Biscay were able to crash dive and get out of the way of destroyers if they came across the horizon at them, but it was much harder to hide away from a Mosquito coming in at 50 feet above the deck, and particularly if it was toting a gun like this. So they realised if they could get the gun to work inside a Mosquito, this would be a very formidable, potent weapon to use against a U-boat. As I say, it's basically an army weapon. It's a 6-pounder anti-tank gun. It fires shells like this. This is a wooden one, just a replica, and this is it. You put one of these in the bomb bay of a Mosquito, and that's you done. The idea being that you fly very low over the submarine, you catch it by surprise, you come up, you fire only maybe 3 or 4 shots, maybe 5 at the very most of this, and get one of them through the casing of the submarine, and that's it. Clearly, with a gun this size and an aircraft like a Mosquito, you've got a couple of technical problems to solve. The first one is the recoil of the gun. Now, you'll be familiar, Newton's third law of motion, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You fire the gun and it will kick back. Now, you've got a recoil mechanism in the gun to absorb the energy of the recoil, but that's got to be transmitted to the airframe of the aircraft somehow. And it was, the net result was that when a Mosquito fired at one of these guns, it would tend to slow down by about 20 miles an hour, which didn't really matter very much because you are doing quite a lick at that stage anyway, maybe 350 knots or something like that, 350 knots. So the loss of 20 miles an hour briefly didn't really make a great deal of difference. And of course you are only going to fire a small number of shots from the gun before you're over the target. So it wasn't a big problem. The bigger problem to solve was how to load the thing, because it's an army gun and it wasn't designed to be loaded automatically. It was designed to have lots of soldiers behind it feeding the shells into the breech. Now you can't do that inside a Mosquito, obviously there's no room. So they went to a company called Molins Engineering, who devised this contraption that fits on the back of the gun, which loaded the shells automatically into the breech. Now, Molins were a company that were famous for making cigarette machines in the 1940s, and somebody figured out that geometrically that's just a cigarette, it's a very much larger cylinder, but the technology for loading it into the breech of the gun would be about the same. Molins solved the problem. It became known as the Molins gun, and quite successful too. Only equipped 1 or 2 squadrons, but they did account for about 10 U-boats sunk and a couple of ships as well. So there's the Molins gun, very successful weapon. The other one I want to show you is the Highball bomb. Now, we're all familiar with the Barnes Wallis bouncing bomb, no doubt, from the Dam Busters. Just let Steph catch up here. The Dam Busters bomb, where you come in very low, they flew in very, very low over the surface of the lakes, dropped the bomb, put backspin on the bomb so that it was spinning before it left the aircraft, and at the shallow angle it hit the water, it wouldn't go into the water, it would skim across the water and hit the dam, sink down to a certain level and then blow up. Now, that was the bouncing bomb called Upkeep, codenamed Upkeep, designed by Barnes Wallis, and he also designed a smaller version too, and this was called Highball. And the idea of the Highball was it was designed to be carried underneath a Mosquito, 2 of them, and they would be used to attack ships. A Mosquito coming in, same principle exactly, come in fast and low, backspin on the bomb, drop it, skims over the water and hits the target, which in this case is a ship. Now, the Highball took a lot longer to get right, and it had a lot of hit and miss and a lot of issues, but they did a lot of practice test drops in a place called Loch Striven, which runs northwards off the Firth of Clyde in Scotland, and they moored an old battleship at the northern end of the loch, and they flew the Mosquitoes up with the Highballs, and they dropped dummy Highballs, not filled with explosive, just to see how they would skim across the water and how they would hit the ship. They dropped about 200 of these dummy inert bombs, and at the end of the war they were all left there, until about 3 years ago when the British Sub Aqua Club and the Royal Navy
organised an expedition up to Lochstryven, and they brought up 3 of these highball bombs from the seabed. They've given one to the Brooklands Museum because of the Barnes Wallis connection. They've given one to us because of the Mosquito connection, and this is it here, sitting in its tank. We keep it in a tank because for the last couple of years we've had this immersed in a tank of fresh water. It's been in salty water for 70 years, so we've had to be very, very careful to wash the salty water out of it before we can start the next stage of conservation, which hopefully we'll be doing this summer. So it's quite a rare sight, this. It's one of the only highballs you'll be able to see on dry land. Here's a replica highball here, which we've put together just to show the release mechanism. That's the actual release mechanism of the highball equipped Mosquito, which actually crashed in the Yorkshire Dales during the war. The top secret equipment was rescued off it and spirited away, and we acquired it, I believe, from another museum some time ago. So it's been reproduced here to give you an idea of how it all works. So there's 2 interesting little weapon loads for you. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned, stay safe, stay well. See you again.